Welcome, foolish mortals. We are the grim, grinning ghosts of the Disenfranchised Podcast. That podcast all about those franchises of one, those films that fancy themselves full-fledged franchises before falling flat on their face after the first film. I am your host, Stephen Foxworthy, and joining me, as always, it's my co-host, Mr. Brett Wright. Brett, how are you? Thank you for coming out to socialize.
Hello, Stephen. Is this podcast actually stretching?
I think it might
or is it just your imagination?
Well, I mean, we do tend to get pretty long-winded, and I have a feeling there's going to be some lore dumps in this episode, so that we might be stretching today.
Oh God!
Both Lord. Our runtime and our audience's patience.
Oh, the lore, fucking the lore. I'll get into it later.
Well, that's why we had to have you for this one, man. We had to make sure we could record when you would be on, because me and this other guy, we don't know the lore. And hey, who is this other guy? Why, it's our other co-host, Tucker. Hey, Tucker.
Hi, it's me, Tucker. How's everyone doing today?
We are doing well. How about yourself, sir?
Feeling good, feeling great. Feeling great, feeling good. How are you, Brett?
I am also tired.
Nice. Wonder what that's like.
Well, when you're as heavily caffeinated as you seem to be right now, I don't think it's as much of an issue.
No, that's just I think pure piss and vinegar. That's not caffeine. That's just your
under caffeinated. So
I'm working on it.
This is just your boy in his natural state. Actually, I did have my V8 Energy a couple hours ago, but caffeine doesn't really. I don't know. I'm just so naturally hyper that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, what's that like? That's the interesting thing. That's what I want to know.
It's exhausting without being exhausting.
Okay, sounds fun.
It's mentally taxing, but physically. To be what, Brett? To be what?
To be thin and healthy. That's what I was going to say.
Well, I don't know if either of those things really describe me these days, but I'm at least I'm upright and breathing.
Hey. That counts for something.
Which is more than we can say for all the ghosts in this movie.
Speaking of, what a segue. Yes, we are here to talk. We are here, as we always are, to talk about a movie that did not get a sequel, that was clearly angling for one. And Brett, what are we covering today, and why?
In honor of the release of the new Haunted Mansion movie, we're going to cover the old Haunted Mansion movie from 2003.
From 2003, the Rob Minkoff directed The Haunted Mansion, starring Eddie Murphy, Terrence Stamp, Nathaniel Parker, Marsha Thomason, Jennifer Tilly, Wallace Shawn, Dina Spivey, Ari Davis, Mark John Jeffries, Deep Roy, Jeremy Howard, Corey Burton, Rachel Harris, and the Dapper Dans. What a cast, gentlemen. What a picture.
I mean, most of the cast, well, the ghost half of the cast, great. Other half of the cast, maybe not so much. The living side of the cast, maybe not so great.
I thought that Wallace Shawn was laying it on a little too thick, but I was still impressed by his performance. But yeah,
Wallace Shawn overdoing something? Really? What?
I know, no. Right? I know.
That's pretty normal.
Still, I agree with you, Brett. Like the family, I don't give a shit about any of them. I'm pretty sure Eddie Murphy had his stunt double call in. Like that's his performance in this movie. Like he's barely there. And I love me some good Eddie Murphy.
I actively hated Eddie Murphy's character.
Let's do the Eddie Murphy of it, because this is 2003 Eddie Murphy. So this is Eddie Murphy on his second decline. Beginning, I would say, his second decline. He is still a pretty huge star. He is a huge star in the 80s and then starts a decline probably shortly after Coming to America. He starts to dip down a little bit. He directs the film Harlem Nights and then tries to recover with a sequel to 48 Hours called Another 48 Hours.
Which is great. Just saying, I like that movie.
The first one was hard for me to watch. I'm not gonna lie. The casual racism of the first 48 hours was rough.
I will say that's just how it was back then. I'm not defending it, but it's just like the LA Confidential book, man. That's what it be like back then.
Doesn't mean I have to like it.
Agreed. I completely understand that.
After that, he does Boomerang, The Distinguished Gentleman, Beverly Hills Cop 3, the worst of that series by a long shot, and the Wes Craven film Vampire in Brooklyn, before kind of rebounding with The Nutty Professor in 96. After that, he's on a pretty good upswing. 98, he's got Mulan and Dr. Dolittle, as well as the kind of forgotten film Holy Man, which is the start of kind of like, wait, is Eddie okay?
Here's the thing, though. I think Holy Man is like the next three films that he does. I think are kind of very underrated. Kind of very underrated. Yeah.
Life, I don't know.
Holy Man, Life, and Bowfinger. I think he gives wonderful performances in all three of those movies, and it's a shame that he didn't keep doing stuff like that.
I do love
Sorry
him
to
in
interrupt,
Bowfinger.
Stephen. I just love those movies, all three of those, and they're like in a little.
I do love Bowfinger. I have not seen Life. I know about Life, and I've heard that Life is actually a lot darker than a lot of people realized at the time, which is part of why it didn't do very well.
Yep.
But then we have this kind of like this middling received things, and then we do. He kind of returns to the well. He does Nutty Professor 2 and Dr. Dolittle 2, going back to his previous hits. But then in between those two, there's a little voice role that he did, probably recorded many years before, for a little film called Shrek, which kind of becomes the juice in his veins for a while. He creates and voices the main character on the PJs. And then it's pretty sharp decline. It's Showtime, it's The Adventures of Pluto Nash, and it's I Spy, all in 2002. All three of those. 2003 gives us Daddy Daycare and this film, The Haunted Mansion. And after this, he pretty much sticks to Shrek movies with the occasional dip back into live action. He does get an Oscar nomination for Dreamgirls, which he is insanely good in.
Yes.
And then,
well deserved.
But then you've also got Norbit and Meet Dave and Imagine That, which between those three, they pretty much kind of kill off most of his live action career for the foreseeable future, until honestly, he kind of makes a turnaround in Dolomite Is My Name just a few years ago. And people see that and they're like, oh, Eddie Murphy's back. Phenomenal. I remember at the 40th SNL anniversary thing that they did, it being a very big deal that he was coming back to that, or it was the 50th. Like there was a very big deal made about the fact he was going to be there for that. And then he didn't want to do the thing that they wrote for him. So he ended up just coming out, and like Chris Rock talked about how great he was. And then he came out and went, hey, everyone like the show? Well, let's get back to the show. That was pretty much it.
Can I go a little further into that?
Please.
So the thing that they wanted him to do was make a brief cameo as Bill Cosby, making a joke about drugging a woman's drink.
In the Celebrity Jeopardy segment, the part eventually went to Kenan Thompson.
Yeah. It was one of the video clues or whatever, where a celebrity comes and he didn't want to do that, but he had such a good time there anyway. He had kind of been afraid to go back because the way things ended there. But because of the 40th anniversary episode or special, that's the only reason we got him back 3 seasons ago, hosting for the first time.
Right.
And it was amazing.
For the first time since he was on the show. Because as Chris Rock says, Eddie hosted the show while he was on the show, which was unheard of.
Yeah.
Still.
Even now, nobody does that. He's the only person who's ever done that.
Yeah. So for the first time since he was actually on the show, and he revisits a lot of his old characters, Mr. Robinson, Gumby, which is exactly what you want. That's what you want.
Even Velvet Jones comes back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it actually is a pretty good episode. But yeah, Eddie Murphy, is in his decline here, and I think it's pretty obvious that this is Eddie in decline, because this is not a strong project. And the fact that this comes out the same year as Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, is what really gets me. Because this movie looks like it probably came out either a few years earlier or was made for TV. Like, this does not feel like a 2003 movie. It feels like a 98 movie.
It feels a lot like the Tower of Terror TV special. Like, there's just like, it's, you know, it doesn't have any substance.
Right.
Like, I didn't care about anything that was happening. And like, it's just like, it felt very much like just popcorn film. Like, just, I don't gotta care. Just gonna eat my popcorn and watch this and maybe chuckle a couple times. I don't know. I didn't, but maybe somebody did.
Just get lost in the production design. That's what I did, because this movie looks great. Like the sets and everything, just I think look phenomenal.
Yeah, which is well, it makes it even more disappointing. This is another one of those adaptations where like there was so much potential and they squandered it, and it just makes me sad.
So let's actually, while we're kind of in this vein, let's talk about our histories with the Haunted Mansion proper. Brett, I'll go ahead and let you go first, because I know you probably have. I know some of your history with this property, and so I would like to hear you talk about your fascination with the Haunted Mansion for a little bit.
Yeah, because it is definitely a fascination. So like, I am the resident Haunted Mansion expert, and that's why I'm on here.
Well, you're also on here because you're a co-host of the show.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, why you specifically?
Like, we finagled a recording day so that we could find a way to make sure your schedule worked. Right.
Yes. Because I don't know if you listeners out there have noticed I haven't been on a whole lot lately.
Life finds a way.
Schedules are hard, especially when you work nights now. But anyway, so yeah, but I will preface everything I say with this caveat, and please don't come for me, Haunted Mansion lovers. I've never actually ridden the ride. Now I'm
clutching my pearls.
I'm sure a lot of Haunted Mansion fans probably just did. Who the fuck is this guy to be an expert when he hasn't even ridden the ride? Not in person, no. But I've watched plenty of videos of a ride through. Probably counts.
Counts,
and right? It counts enough. I don't know. I just never look like, you know, we had money when I was a kid to like travel to like Ohio, the next state over, and go to Kings Island.
Kings Island, like a mofo, absolutely.
We certainly never had enough money to go down to Disney. Fuck no. So I was always jealous of those kids. So I haven't gotten to ride the rides I've always wanted to, like Tower of Terror, like the Haunted Mansion. Which, I mean, I apparently really need to get on riding Tower of Terror, because they got rid of the one in California.
Yeah,
only a matter of time before the one in Florida goes too.
The days are numbered, I'm sure. Now that Galaxy's Edge has moved down to Orlando, it's only a matter of time before Avengers Tower clears out the Tower of Terror.
Yeah, so I need to get down there sooner rather than later. Hopefully within the next couple of years.
I mean, they didn't turn that one into a Guardians of the Galaxy in Florida?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh.
I'm sure they will. I'm positive it's coming. It's
only a matter of time. Once Avengers Campus gets moved down there, it probably will.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would say that there was a Haunted Mansion ripoff ride at Kings Island called Phantom Theater.
Phantom Theater?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do remember the Phantom Theater, yeah.
That's the one you got on after the water park to dry off, because it had the big furnace at the end.
Yes. That took over the Smurf ride that was there when I was a kid, which was kind of like It's a Small World, but with Smurfs.
Right.
It was also where you would take the gals you met there to straight up hold their hands and like make out with them and stuff.
Yeah, also true. Not that I ever did any of that, but yeah.
We called them Kings Island girlfriends. You only had them for that one day.
I was never attractive enough for that, so yeah, I never did any of that.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was too concerned with like riding rides and having a good time than like, you know, macking on the ladies.
Hey, that's what you do in line, ding dong. It doesn't matter what you're focused on. Like that's what you do in line.
Oh,
man.
I'm sorry. I'm not the words failing me. I can't even.
It's early. Drink some coffee, Brett.
It's too early. Oh,
God. It's okay. I'll just pretend you said something really clever and that I'm really insulted.
Good, thank you.
Oh, damn it, Brett, you got me. Oh, man.
So you don't have a comeback for that now, do you? You don't have a comeback.
Casanova. Fucking Casanova was the name I was looking for.
I prefer Don Juan.
Bossa Nova?
Chevy Nova?
Excellent.
None of the above. Anyway, so Phantom Theater being a Haunted Mansion ripoff ride, when I would later see the Haunted Mansion and see that it was much better production quality and a lot more better designed, sort of like my love for Haunted Mansion and Phantom Theater nostalgia sort of mixed with one another. And so I just sort of became obsessed with Haunted Mansion. That's pretty much it, really. I know most of the lore is disconnected and confusing and not consistent as it is.
I was gonna say you are an admitted lore fiend. You do love you some lore, so I know that has probably played a big role in your love for this particular property because there is a lot of lore here.
It's a love and hate relationship in that sense, because I mean a lot of it is fan created because because Disney never really came out and like released any official stuff. We have comic books and novels and like design documents, and we've got a couple movies. If we're counting Muppets Haunted Mansion, we have a couple movies. The new one makes 3.
Right.
And so it's all just kind of disjointed and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In the comics, they took what every other big franchise does nowadays. They took the multiverse route, so that all of it is canon and none of it is canon at the same time.
Right.
And also, there's different mansions across the world.
Right. Which is my take on how you sequelize this movie, because, and I think if they had done well, they absolutely would have sequelized it. Again, this comes out the same year as Pirates. Like you just move to a different mansion.
Right. And I mean, most of them, like the one in France is a much different. The one in Japan is a much different. All the characters have different names, but the story is the same. Which I'll get into all the lore later. The one in China, I always forget which one isn't a haunted mansion. It's the Mystic Mansion.
I was gonna say probably China, because ghosts, like horror movies, are the one thing that doesn't take advantage of the Chinese box office because of their relationship with the dead.
That would be it.
Ghosts are outlawed in China. They're
Correct.
Against the law.
Yeah. So
which means that if you die in China, you die in real life.
Yeah. But the police will come get you if you come back as a ghost.
Correct.
Who are you going to call? Chinese police. There's a station like in San Francisco, so they're real close.
Good to know. So that mansion is completely different. There are no ghosts. It feels more like an Indiana Jones ride.
Right. That tracks.
Which deals with the other, the Adventurers Guild or something like that exists in the background lore of Disney. Like that's another thing. There's a whole Adventurers Guild that ties into a bunch of different rides.
Jungle Cruise, I think, is part of it.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So that's a whole other Disney background lore that they never really acknowledge, but it's there. Disney's weird like that. But it is what it is. I don't know if they would have done that sequel wise, but it's an idea. But anyway, that's my history. I think that's everything.
All right.
Probably. Sorry, I've never actually ridden the ride, everybody.
You know what? I haven't.
I know a lot about it.
I've actually been to Disney and I've never ridden the ride because when I visited, I was a very young child, and at as I've noted many times in this podcast, a coward. So if my parents had wanted to take me on that ride, and I'm not sure that they would have, I would not have gone on it. It was not until my late teens that even attempted Phantom Theater at Kings Island. So,
oh yeah, fun story. I mean, the first time I ever rode Phantom Theater, I was clinging to my dad's arm like I was going to die. So there was a time.
There was a time. Even young Brett was a fear to the ghosties.
Yeah, but I do acknowledge that Phantom Theater is one of the original things that, like, one of those formative, what everybody nowadays calls canon events. Thanks, Across the Spider-Verse, or that like made me love horror. So
okay, right on. And Tucker, what is your history with the Haunted Mansion?
Hi, hello there. It's me, Tucker. Here's my history with the Haunted Mansion. When I was a young boy, probably about 12 years old or so, we went to the Disney Worlds, and it was pretty rad. And I rode the Haunted Mansion, and it was pretty rad. But I'm pretty indifferent about the whole thing. I think it's cool. I've always thought I enjoyed the ride when I rode it, and I think it's cool that it exists, and I'm glad that it has a thriving fandom. I just do not really count myself as part of that group. That's not to say that I'm against it or that I hate it. I just don't really care either way, which I think was probably a really good way to go into this film. It was fun to watch all the moments that you could tell were like meant to be like big things for people who are fans of the ride. And I'm like, that's a big thing. And I don't have any context for it, but I'm glad it's here. And the people who like this, they're seeing this and they think it's rad. It's so obvious when they do that in the movie, because things will seem so out of place, yet so spotlit, you know?
Oh,
yeah. There's definitely like a specificity that doesn't exist within, like, and I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean is going to be a really good touch point comparison for us this episode, because it comes out the same year and it succeeds where the Haunted Mansion fails. Like, it actually does end up getting the sequels and the franchise built out of it. But also, Gore Verbinski is a much better filmmaker than Rob Minkoff, who's the director of this film. And so you get Gore Verbinski has like a sense of subtlety. Like, all the references to Pirates of the Caribbean are like, they're rarely front loaded. Most of them are kind of existing in the background, which I think is the right way to do it, because it feels like this movie at times will go out of its way to try to like shoehorn in a thing just because it's iconography from the ride, which I think is the mistake.
Yeah, I even have a note, because I had notes for this movie, because of course I did.
Hell yeah.
90% of this movie could not be called The Haunted Mansion and nothing would change. The other 10% are nothing but Leo pointing meme.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, that's what this it says. It's like they wrote out all the things they wanted to reference in the script, and like, okay, now let's build a story around all these references. And
then they put most of them in like just the scene where they're driving through the cemetery in the coach.
Yeah, most of them are.
Most of all of that is just shoehorned into that one scene. Now, obviously, there are a few things here and there outside, but that is your most ghost dense scene. Just that one.
Pretty much
scene.
That entire sequence from the point. From the point he says there's always my way, which I'll die, that really pissed me off, to the end of the, like, when they get to the mausoleum. That entire thing is just one big reference.
Right.
And it's references to things that aren't even in the graveyard. Like, the two guys dueling are in the ballroom. Like, so I don't know why they put them in the graveyard. But it's...
Because they had to shove them in there somewhere.
Right,
exactly.
And
it was on the list of things they had to include.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's like, it was like the two bits of fan service that I hated in The Flash were the two callback Michael Keaton lines, and it felt like that. That part of this movie felt like that, because in The Flash, like, I really enjoyed it, but you could tell somebody was like, all right, Michael Keaton needs to say this and this. We don't care where you put it. It just has to be in there.
Yeah.
And you can tell that nobody wanted to put it in there. They were just like, I guess it fits here. And that's why they put your boys out in the graveyard, because they're like, what do we do with this? We don't have anything written for this. So I guess we'll just throw them here, I guess. This is good. They're there, right? Yay.
Yeah,
because
that and the scene where he's walking down the picture hallway, the portrait hallway with the bus that follow him.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one big reference. I didn't mind that one because it is in the background. It's creepy setting. It sort of fit that part of the movie,
and it's not so lampshaded that we're like, oh, I mean, you can tell, oh, this is something that is part of the ride that people would recognize, but it's not. They don't go out of their way to draw attention to it. It's part of the scene, and it works.
Yeah. Steven, what's your history with the ride, though?
I wasn't done, though.
Oh, you weren't?
No, you guys started talking, and I never got back to what I was saying.
You went on the ride and liked it, and
you're indifferent to the whole thing? What more is there to say?
Me,
right.
I wanted to talk for a minute about Phantom Theater. I want to put my 2 cents in about that, my friends.
Oh, all right. Well, my bad.
Phantom Theater is the shit. I was very, very disappointed when they removed it. But something that's really great about Kings Island is that it's kind of fan service for people who have been going to that theme park their entire lives. Kings Island, all throughout that park, has references to shit that, unless you were there 20 years ago, you have no idea what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they have props from Phantom Theater all over that park, including within the new ride that's in that building. There are props from the original Phantom Theater. Just like the gravestone for Son of Beast, just like Top Gun being turned into the Bat. Everything is a little reference to people who have been going to the park all their lives. And that's something I really like about that park. Something I want to say that has to do with the Haunted Mansion and Phantom Theater. I'm a huge theme park guy, but I much prefer the ones that are not Disney or Universal. I prefer just regular old theme parks. And I feel like I was spoiled as a child because Kings Island is, I think, the biggest and the best ran park that is not owned by Disney or Universal in the United States.
Cedar Point would like a word.
Yeah, Cedar Point is close, but they did not get that cigar. They're still chasing it. Kings Island still wins.
Also, Holiday World and Splash and Safari would also like a word.
I'm sorry, Holiday World and Splash and Safari is on a different tier, so you can't really compare the two.
Fair.
Kings Island's up in the S tier. Holiday World, no matter how good it is, right around B, just because of the size and location.
Yeah, Santa Claus, Indiana, real ones know.
Right next to Rudolph Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm taking a road trip to Cincinnati to go to a theme park, I'm just going to go to Kings Island.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never been to Cedar Point. I don't really care to go.
I mean,
Cedar Point.
If you like coasters, Cedar Point is your place.
I can't fit on a coaster anymore, so
same.
Damn it.
Same.
Neither of you can be my coaster buddy. You guys, I need a coaster buddy.
I wish I could be. I
love roller coasters. Friends, I guess.
I love roller coasters, and I can't ride them anymore because I'm too large.
I was going to say, find small friends.
I have the opposite problem, and this really is a problem. Last time I went to Kings Island was 2021, and I did 2 days by myself because fuck everybody else. I want to do what I want to do. The only problem with that is I always have to ride on the front seat of a roller coaster. I refuse to ride anywhere but the front seat of a roller coaster. And that means sometimes I stay in line longer, but that's okay. I get to see it and experience everything first. And it's open in front of me. Mm-hmm. I don't need somebody barfing in front of me and it's smacking in my face. No, not going to happen. Not to this guy.
You'd rather they do it right behind you and it go down the back of your neck. Got it.
Yeah. That's better than in my fucking face. But the problem with that is when I go by myself, sometimes I have to ride in the front seat by myself, which is a problem because I've never weighed more than 150 pounds in my entire life. So sitting in the front seat of a roller coaster by myself, that's not enough weight to keep that car down. So on every roller coaster that I had to ride by myself in the front seat, it's about 30 times rougher than it would be if I had somebody in that front seat with me to balance the weight out and keep the cart where it needs to be. So what I'm saying is about 60% of the roller coasters that I rode at Kings Island on my last trip were just miserable experiences because they were so rough because I don't weigh enough to comfortably ride in the front seat by myself.
God, talk about a first world problem, right?
Well, Tucker, next time you take a trip to Kings Island, let me know, because I might have lost enough weight in the past couple months that I might be able to fit on rides again.
Oh, so. I'm way into that. Way into it. I do.
Except for the Racer. The Racer is so old that it's made for skinny people. You can't be over like 150 and fit on that ride. So
I haven't ridden the Racer since I was a wee child.
Yeah.
I will warn you, Brett, I have a very particular order that I have to ride the roller coasters in. Kings Island is a very big deal to me. God. It's my special place.
That's fine.
It's my memory palace. So it's very special. We'll discuss this more later when it's time to go to Kings Island.
And Tucker, before the day is over, Tucker will have procured his Kings Island girlfriend.
Yay! It doesn't work as well as an older person, really, because most of the people that are there that are my age are there with their children and spouse.
Yeah.
I do want to talk to the nostalgia part a little bit before we move on to Steven's history, because one, if you go to Kings Island during Halloween and you go to the Midway section with all the carnival games, at least last time I went, which was a few years ago, to be fair.
That's the Coney Island section is what that's called.
Yeah,
right.
They decorated that section with the old animatronics.
Oh, fucking A. So, I've never been to the Halloween or the Christmas thing there.
I've never been to the Christmas one. The Halloween one is good. And the last 2 years, they brought it back this year. They have a Phantom Theater show. Look it up on YouTube. It is great. It has a lot of references to the ride, if you ever rode it. And it's basically just like, the usual theme park show that you see. There's musical numbers. There's dancing. It's goofy as fuck.
Yeah, sounds like, yeah.
But it's great if you're a fan of Phantom Theater. There's a guy that has a big puppet of the legless ghost. He plays has a big puppet of the legless ghost. It's a main character. It's real good. Check it out.
Cool.
I did look it up on YouTube, and apparently not only can you watch the 2023 performance in high quality 4K from 1 month ago, you can also, there are several high quality POV ride throughs of the original ride. One put out from uploaded. Kings Island by themselves.
Yeah, uploaded by Kings Island proper.
I will have to check those out and nostalgia hole that.
Because I will tell you, the one uploaded by Kings Island itself has it's a video of the ride, but the soundtrack is isolated, so that way you can hear all of the sounds you were supposed to hear during the ride and not have to try to discern them through the video.
Nice.
So it sounds like they use the actual ride soundtrack.
Yeah, they probably just synced it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really awesome. Check that out too.
I know.
Anyway,
I already gave my history with the Haunted Mansion. Went to Disney, did not ride the ride. That's it.
Is that it? That's it. Okay.
The fullest extent of my history with this ride, because I didn't ride it, and I didn't see this movie until last night. I think I've probably heard Grim Grinning Ghosts a couple of times, but I don't really have a lot of knowledge or information about this ride. I do know that during the Christmas season, if you go to Disney during Christmas, they give it a Nightmare Before Christmas skin.
Only in California.
Only in California. Okay.
Yeah, because I avoided it for a long time because, if I'm going to go ride the Haunted Mansion for the first time,
sure,
I want it to be the Haunted Mansion.
Right.
So I was pissed for the longest time that I could never go during Halloween when I really want to go.
Right.
But then I had somebody inform me that, they don't do that in Florida. They only do it in California.
Oh, well, there you go.
So I can go to Disney and enjoy Disney Halloween themed shit and also ride the Haunted Mansion. So that's the plan eventually, maybe next year.
Okay. Fingers crossed. I hope that for you. I
believe in you.
I want you to take some remote recording equipment and record your thoughts before and immediately following you riding the Haunted Mansion, because we need those. Our patrons need to hear that.
Remote recording equipment, like your cell phone?
Yep.
Is that okay? Just making sure. You made it sound like he's got like a reel-to-reel, like a microphone, and
quiet.
Just the one earphone,
We're
reporting live from Universal Studios.
We're not some fly-by-night organization. Yeah, we are. Fuck it. We are.
Yeah. No, look, really, honestly, I don't need to record it. It'll just be me crying for like 20 minutes.
There you go.
It's
in that
so
case,
good.
sobbing.
In that
Oh my
case,
God, I loved it.
in that case, get the video. Brett just sobbing as he gets off the
Just
Haunted
tears
Mansion.
of joy pouring out of my face.
Or as Terrence Stamp would say, tears of joy. God, Terrence Stamp doing a fucking Boris Karloff impression in this movie.
I submit that he was the best part of this film.
I mean, it's not like
By
there's
a
really
long
much
shot.
competition.
Not a
for
whole lot of
that.
competition, no.
But in saying that, I don't want to besmirch his performance, because just because everything else sucked in this movie, he's the best part because he was amazing.
Yeah,
Not because he was better than everybody else, because it wouldn't be hard to be better than most of the performances in this movie.
He feels
But
like
he's
the
just
only
killing
performer
it.
who's actually dialed into what this movie is supposed to be trying to do.
Agreed.
And I think everyone
I think-
else just is on a completely different page, or on several different pages, actually.
I thought Nathaniel Parker's performance was pretty good too, but I think they kind of feed off of each other. So that's just kind of like one little pod
They
of
do.
characters and actors. So those two together, I think, create just one. Just that's the spotlight of the film. That's the tent pole for me of this movie, is those two performances and those two characters. Those are the only two characters I gave a shit about.
Really, they're the only two characters you could say in this movie.
Yeah,
Honestly,
fleshed out actual characters.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. So there is a particular story to this film, and I wonder how close the lore that this movie gives to the Haunted Mansion is similar to the lore that is actually built into the ride and that the fans have built up over the years. So I guess, Brett, what I'm trying to say is, explain this to me.
Let's do the plot in 60 first, shall we?
Okay.
We're going to talk about the story. We might as well do this first, huh?
Touche.
Yeah.
Touche. So
Makes sense.
this is the part of the show where we recount the plot of the film we are discussing. In this case, 2003's The Haunted Mansion, in 60 seconds or less. And in order to determine which of us will be doing that, Brett will roll the D6 of destiny. He will assign two sides to each of us, and then whoever the dice decides will recount the plot in 60 seconds or less. Brett, who's what, and give it a roll.
Steven, you'll be 1 and 2 because you never rode the ride. Steven, Tucker, you'll be 3 and 4 because you rode it but don't care. And 5 and 6 because I may not have rode it, but I love it. So here we go. That is a 6.
Hey, I was hoping it would shake out like this.
Yeah.
Get it, Brett.
The D6 agrees. So I will go ahead and put 60 seconds on the timer. Brett, I will give you the 30 and the 10-second warnings, as we often do, at which point it will be time after that. So whenever you begin, I will start the clock.
Okay, so Eddie Murphy is a real estate agent, and he's a real asshole. He doesn't really care about his wife. All he cares about is work. But he decides to make it up to his wife by saying, "Hey, let's take the kids to the lake like we used to." But then they get a call about needing somebody wanting to sell a big mansion. So they decide to take a detour. On the way to the lake, they get trapped by a storm. Turns out there's ghosts in this mansion, and a nefarious plot to break a curse happens. Turns
30
out
seconds.
Master Gracie's soon-to-be bride was killed herself. So everybody gets separated. They have to come back together before he remarries Eddie Murphy's wife, who actually looks a lot like the bride. Turns out the bride was murdered,
10
not
seconds.
suicided. The butler did it. They killed twice, and then they all go to heaven. The end.
And that is time. Okay, so that is the plot of the movie that we watched today. So Brett, what is the plot of The Ride?
Well, real quick, I did have a note that a lot of movies talk about hell and going to hell and whatnot. But for the rest of it seems like most movies just go pass on to the afterlife. Thought it was a real choice to actually say it was heaven in this movie.
And well, that one guy gets taken to hell, right? Remember, the one guy gets wrapped in fire and taken to hell.
He gets
you know what?
dragged
Speaking
to
of
hell.
that,
Yeah.
this movie looks like somebody was was a big fan of the Frighteners when they wrote this movie. And like visually, like the ghosts are very similar to the ghosts in the Frighteners, and the whole hell sequence reminds me of Johnny Bartlett getting like chomped up and pulled into hell and stuff.
That's true.
Like I was reminded of the Frighteners a lot, just like visually, especially like the old mansion thing as well. I mean, I know that comes from the ride, but still, I think a lot of this movie, especially visually, owes a lot to the Frighteners, whether it was intentional or not.
And also in the fact that this movie is a roadmap of pain.
Of pain, yes.
Yes, a roadmap of pain that has nothing to do with the ride.
There it is.
Or any of its lore whatsoever.
There it is.
Except that there's a tragic story about a bride, I guess. So there's two main lines of story for the Haunted Mansion. The first one, from its opening till about 2006, I want to say. Yes, 2006. Is that one of the daughters of Master Gracie? It's been a while, so bear with me. I don't know it as by heart as I do a lot of other lore. One of the daughters of Master Gracie wants to marry essentially the Hatbox Ghost, the human form of the Hatbox Ghost. On their wedding day, she's in her gown. They're about to get married, but they are mysteriously murdered. She is pushed out the attic window, and Hattie has his head cut off and shoved into a hat box.
Yay!
And that's that story. And that's the Beating Heart Bride, who was in the ride up until 2006, who didn't really have much of a form. They just called her the Beating Heart Bride because the main focus of her, I don't know what you call it, because it's not animatronic. It's when they project a thing over a figure. I don't know what that's called. I always forget.
I don't remember either, but I know exactly what you're talking. Yeah, there's like a featureless thing, and then they project the image over the top of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what would come later with Constance Hatchaway. But hers was an actual animatronic with like a red beating heart, and she was kind of featureless. So that was that. But the Hatbox Ghost only stuck around for the first year because they couldn't really get it to work back then. So he disappeared until 2006 when they revamped the mansion and redid the lore, which is a lot darker, actually, surprisingly enough. So this one is about Constance Hatchaway, who was also, I think, a daughter of Master Gracie. I'm not sure. But she was a much more nefarious character. She wanted to marry into money. And when she married into money, she realized, you know what? My husband dies. I get all of his money and I can do this again. So she kills her first husband and proceeds to do that for the next 4 or 5 guys. Just cutting them into pieces or hacking their heads off with a hatchet.
As one does.
As one does.
Like Joan Cusack in Addams Family Values.
Yep.
A little bit. More straightforward, though. Not elaborate ways. Just a hatchet.
The simplest ways are the best. A little cleaner, you know?
A little bit. The lore deviates a little bit there. I personally like the lore that the Hatbox Ghost was one of... When she would cut off the heads of her husbands, she would stuff them in hat boxes. And the Hatbox Ghost... That's why there's a stack of hat boxes in the attic next to the bride.
And all of their hats are literally hanging on a hat tree. So you know there's something else in the boxes.
Right. But again, that's something Disney's never said.
Right.
It's something that fans made up through context clues. It could absolutely be just a coincidence. But I like that interpretation.
It feels logical, and it feels like something. It feels like how you skirt around a legitimate horror while not on a kid's ride. Like how you can actually put something really odd and disconcerting on a kid's ride without overtly saying she decapitated these guys and their heads are in these boxes. Because you can't really say that on a kid's ride.
No, which is weird considering how the ride starts.
Mhm.
Which I can get into that. There's always my way thing. Why I hated it in this movie. Like they couldn't. It's like they show Master Gracie hanging himself at the beginning of the movie,
Right.
but they take
Bold
away
move for a PG movie.
It is.
Plus
which
all
is-
the decapitations in this movie, and it's still PG.
Right.
Ridiculous.
But, like-
Heads are flying in this motherfucker.
But like they defang that a little bit by taking away the second part of that, which what makes it so dark is in the original ride when you're in the stretching room. And the ghost host, who is Master Gracie or not Master Gracie, nobody's really sure. He just calls himself the ghost host. You know, you'll see this room has no doors, no windows. Do you think you can find your way out? If you can, of course, there's always my way. And then when you look up, there's a scream, and you look up, and there's a projection of a body hanging in the rafters. That's how he got out.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah.
Which is like really dark for a Disney ride, but they're really cool play on words, and like,
Yeah.
really, like, I like it. It's really cool. So to like separate those two and make it just a throwaway stupid reference that is maybe the one that's the most in your face in the entire movie. Upsetting, real upsetting.
Fair.
But yeah, so those are the two main storylines. Constance Hatchaway apparently was always in the ride. She's one of the portraits in the stretching room. They just turned her into a full-fledged story when they revamped the mansion.
Gotcha.
What else?
It's the Tiki Lounge. I get it now.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the movie, they're in the Tiki Lounge.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the credits and it says Tiki Lounge guests, and I'm like, when were they in the? Oh yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, well, this is clearly the haunted tiki room.
Yeah.
That's cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Brett. It's just I just had that realization, like the light bulb like appeared over my head and exploded.
Yeah, no.
Tiki Lounge, you cheeky dogs.
But I mean that's pretty much it in terms of story. Like there none of the story in the movie is anywhere in the ride or has ever been. Which is just another one of those situations where, like, you know, like I've said with Resident Evil plenty of times, like you have a perfectly good story right there.
Yeah, what's the point in making it different?
Perfectly good stories right there, and you decide to do something completely different.
Right.
Why?
Doesn't make any sense. Most of the time, I can be like, oh, because, you know, they want to make money and they're businessmen. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But you have to be like, I don't know how stupid you have to be like, oh, you know what? Instead of these two stories that millions of people are in love with and come every year to ride this ride multiple times, those aren't good enough. Let's write one that sucks. Like, what's the thought process behind that? Studio executives, you know what? Leave it in the comments. If you're a studio executive, leave in the comments why the fuck you do something like that.
Well, and again, this is an interesting time because this is Disney really putting a lot of their eggs into the let's build rides, movies around our rides. Like, we've got these very storied attractions. And again, I feel like Pirates is a really good model. Depending on who you ask, and there are definitely some theories about this online, it's never been absolutely verified one way or another. But there is... The rumor is that the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are actually based on a script for a video game. Brett, you know which video game I'm talking about? Guy Forbush.
Oh, Monkey Island. Legend of Monkey Island.
Yes, the Monkey Island video game. Like and they point to different characters and different like concepts as being very similar. Curse of Monkey Island. Yeah. That one. But that a lot of those elements, they basically took the story that had been developed for that game, for that video game movie adaptation, and basically refitted it into a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, because things like Ghost Pirates are not in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Like, so many of the elements of that movie are not in the actual ride. They've been added since, but they weren't a part of the original ride. So you do kind of have to graft a story around these rides where there's nothing really there to graft a story onto, which is an unenviable task. And I can see the desire for a filmmaker to want to impose their own story on something rather than borrow from something that has never been explicitly stated as the lore. I think is kind of their thinking behind it. Whether that's right or not is up for debate, but I get that that's what they're doing. I just think it's more successful with Pirates of the Caribbean, in part because Verbinski's a better filmmaker than Minkoff, but also because you've got an established story that allegedly you're riffing off of, and something that's already been created for that, and you're just, again, switching, like we talked about last week with the Bratz movie. You kind of have this thing that's for another property, and you just graft a property onto the top of it, is really kind of how it works.
Sure. And that makes me think that, like, because I mean, even the two stories that I just told you about is not the same as the first original story that they wanted to go with. So
Right.
like, and I mean, through all of them, there's a tragic story about a bride. So like that, really, they could have asked Disney, like, hey, what's the main story going on that we can build off of? And they probably just told them, oh, it's a tragic story about a bride.
That's the central piece of iconography, really, is the bride.
Yeah,
from what I understand.
No, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, the bride is the central character of the mansion. She comes at the end. You go through. You're in the stretching room. You go through the conservatory into the endless hallway, across the ballroom into the seance room, or the other way around, and then you go up to the attic. You fall out of the attic window down to the graveyard. So, and the bride is like the main feature near the end of the ride. So,
right.
I think the worst part about the changing of the story and not making it like the ride at all is the fact that they went with the most predictable, trope-filled plot that they could think of. Oh, they want the lady there because guess what? She fucking looks like the dead girl. Never seen that one before. Never. Not once.
Alfred
Hitchcock, he said
Hitchcock
very sarcastically.
making money in his grave.
That's like every ghost movie. It's like, oh, you look like my dead wife, so you're gonna die and be a ghost with me. That's every other ghost movie that comes out.
Fuck, Bram Stoker or Francis Ford Coppola uses it in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like,
yes, it's so overused, and to just be like, you know what? Instead of telling these intricate stories that are really fun and the fans love, let's just fucking shit out like the most basic shit. And slap the Haunted Mansion name on it and theme it to the Haunted Mansion. $1 billion. Question mark, profit.
Yeah, see, because even talking about this, like, we're talking about how maybe they didn't know, like, that the stories that the fans know are not official stories, but like the new Haunted Mansion seems to be following the stories just fine. The main scary ghost in all the trailers is the bride is confirmed to be Constance Hatchaway. The Hatbox Ghost seems to be a villain right now, though, and that's a little weird. So maybe there's something there. We don't really know. But other than that, I mean, they seem to follow the story just fine here. The new one. So,
and I'm fine with changing things in adaptation because, obviously some things that work on a dark ride don't work cinematically, so you have to change some things. But this shit with this movie that we watched, this Haunted Mansion, it's just unexcusable. There's no fucking reason for it.
Yeah.
At all.
It doesn't really work particularly well, I don't think. And it's made even worse by all of the quote unquote riffing that Eddie Murphy is doing that seems completely divorced from the fact that he's in a haunted house movie. Like, it's like he's just talking about termites. Like, half of his riffs are and I understand that's been kind of that's part of the reason you get Eddie Murphy. Like, I'm sure half of the stuff he did on Mulan and Shrek was completely ad-libbed off the top of his head. He's very good at that. But like, maybe give him some direction, or like
you got to give him something to work with, man.
Yeah.
You can't just throw Eddie Murphy out there like with nothing and expect him to do something. Like maybe in his Saturday Night Live days, but when you're talking about big budget movies like this, there's no room for that kind of shit. You gotta You got to give the man something.
Exactly. And I mean, that was one of the biggest flaws that we picked out of when we talked about the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot, is just the fact that it felt like they're riffing without much direction. And the direction that is there seems to be somewhat lacking. And I think, let's talk Rob Minkoff for a little bit, because I think he's because he's an animator that segues into live action and then circles back around to animation. So he's a Disney animator.
You could say it's the circle of life.
And which is very fitting, because his first big feature film for the Walt Disney Company is a little movie which he directs alongside a guy called Roger Allers, called The Lion King. Ever heard of it? Roger Allers was, I believe, the guy who tried to do the movie that would become The Emperor's New Groove. The Kingdom of the Sun was the name of it, and it was supposed to be kind of this big budget epic thing. And then it got taken away. And there's actually a documentary you can find on YouTube made by Sting's wife that is, I think it's called the Pressure Box or something like that. It's really good, and it's on YouTube. I don't think there's any way to watch it legally because it was never officially released. Disney always likes to squash it, but it'll occasionally pop up on YouTube, and you can watch it, and it's very, very good. I think that's what it's called. I'm not sure. Then he goes on to direct both Stuart Little and Stuart Little 2. Yes, the M. Night Shyamalan written film Stuart Little.
It's called The Sweat Box.
The Sweat Box. I knew it was something. The something box. The Sweat Box. Thank you. Then he directs The Haunted Mansion. After that, he directs the Jackie Chan Jet Li film, The Forbidden Kingdom, which doesn't feel like he's the right guy to direct that. He directs something called Flypaper, which I have legitimately never heard of. It's a heist movie with Patrick Dempsey and Ashley Judd, apparently. And then he goes back to animation. He does Mr. Peabody and Sherman in 2014, future episode of this podcast, and then Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank, which is just an animal reskin of Blazing Saddles.
Oh, I thought it would be like a ripoff of Kung Fu Panda, just with different animals.
No, Mel Brooks has a writing credit on Paws of Fury.
That's great. I kind of want to see it now.
I've seen some of the scenes from it. There are like direct one-to-one animated.
Fuck yes.
Versions of some Blazing Saddles.
Look at this cast too. This is a good. Your boy Mel Brooks is in the cast.
Oh yeah. I do love me some Mel Brooks, as you well know. But yeah, so Rob Minkoff, I would not call him like a particularly I think he's done a couple things that have been like The Lion King is a legitimately good film, but beyond that, I don't have any love for the Stuart Little films. Like beyond that, I'm just kind of like, I mean, why does this guy get to Gore Verbinski in? Like Gore Verbinski is the guy who gave us The Ring, and he's the one that does Pirates of the Caribbean, and they give this to Rob Minkoff. Like, are they expecting Rob Minkoff to become the next big thing? Like, and it feels like almost all the budget goes to secure Eddie Murphy. And everything else goes into
I don't know, production design, man. They dumped a lot of money in making that shit look good, I think. And it was worth it because, like I said, one of the good things about this movie is the set design, art direction, production design all look amazing. I don't know how accurate they are, but it looks fucking great. It looks great.
The only one that's accurate is that aforementioned portrait room walkthrough. It has the actual Haunted Mansion purple wallpaper and the portraits and all that. That's the only one that looks remotely like the ride.
Well, and I know they mixed the design elements from some of the various Haunted Mansions. I think particularly the ones in Disneyland and Disney World specifically. Based on what I read, they kind of mixed the design a little bit of it. It was predominantly inspired by the one in Anaheim, but the one in Orlando, there were some design elements included there. I think specifically the conservatory off to the side was kind of inspired by that.
The conservatory does look pretty accurate too.
So, but yeah, just again, certain design elements pretty spot on, pretty other design elements not so much. But
there are two other things that I really have to talk about. in this movie that I want to make sure I point out. And since you've been silent for a half a second, I feel like I can interject with these 2 points. The Jennifer Tilly of it all. Love me some Jennifer Tilly, my queen, Jennifer Tilly.
Mm-hmm.
She's great in this, underutilized.
That's the problem. She's not given nearly enough to do. Now, granted, she does not need this. She's got that Simpsons money, but like, I always love it when she shows up. I do.
The only thing that I didn't like is that they just took, like, apparently, so Madame Leota in the ride is doing a seance and doing an incantation. That's why she's rhyming. Apparently, the people that wrote this movie thought, well, she rhymes all the time. That's her thing. No, it isn't. She's saying an incantation during a seance. That's why she's rhyming. She doesn't rhyme all the time.
You just rhymed
on a
one time.
Consistent basis.
Oh,
yes.
Brett's a poet and he doesn't even know it. Snoogans.
Or did I do that on purpose and I do know it?
Oh.
Well, if you did, you would have just rhymed purpose with something.
Nah.
Would he?
Would I have?
I would have.
Oh, well.
But I'm a stickler for that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Sure.
Jennifer Tilly, the shit. The second thing I wanted to bring up. Oh, also, I didn't even realize she was rhyming when she spoke. I didn't realize that was happening.
Sometimes it was
all the time.
I was gonna say.
It went right over my head.
When she does it, it's like aggressively obvious, and I found myself just going, "We don't need this. We don't need this."
The other thing I wanted to point out was, since I'm the resident credits guy, self-appointed resident credits guy, what do you think of that Nelly song that ended this movie? So appropriate, right? Didn't it fit the tone of this movie? Wasn't it the perfect credits song? You said sarcastically?
When the credits started, I about rolled my eyes out of my head and shut it off.
Oh my God. And yet the worst part is that there's also the score to this movie, I think, is phenomenal. I loved the score. I thought the music was great. And to go from that, especially because there's a big swelling part of the score that's really great at the end of the movie, go to that, to some fucking crackerjack beat with Nelly just randomly saying shit over it. I got nothing against Nelly, like Country Grammar all the way, but also the fuck out of my Haunted Mansion movie, man. You got no business here. No business.
And again,
what's
it's one of those
thought process behind that being the credit song to this movie?
It feels like
there's
a decision.
There's no other licensed songs in this movie. It's all score. Sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
No, it just, I mean, all the stuff that the Dapper Dans are kind of singing, but those are mostly traditional songs other than Grim Grinning Ghosts. But yeah, all the stuff the Dapper Dans are singing as the busts, that I don't know how much of that you had to license, but yeah, I think the Nelly track being over the end credits feels like one of those decisions that was like made by someone in the production, and it feels like an Eddie Murphy demand. I don't know if that's true. I'm just speculating wildly here, where he's like, oh, you should put this Nelly song in the credits. Like, I heard this Nelly song and I really like it. Or like, oh, my daughter really likes this Nelly song, you should put it in the credits, kind of a thing. Like, have you heard of this guy? Maybe he should write a song for the movie. Like, he's really big right now. It feels like one of those like studio decisions that's made without taking into consideration the movie that we're making. And I found it about as jarring as I find the snap cut to Blue Moon at the end of American Werewolf in London, which is one of my least favorite like cuts to credits in film history. Like,
I like that one.
I don't like that one. Like, it takes me right out of what should be a very poignant ending to that movie. And I think
that's kind of the point.
I know it's a joke. I don't like the joke, is what I'm saying.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
That joke,
fair.
I know exactly what it is. I just don't like it.
Okay. I got it. Yeah.
It's the reason. It's the thing that keeps that movie from being perfect for me. Honestly.
Your mileage may vary on the end credits of American Werewolf in London.
But no, I don't. It's very jarring, and I don't like. But it feels like a studio decision where you're like, "Who's big right now? Who's hot? Who can we get on this?" I don't know. Nelly's the only one taking our call. Sure, let's set up a meeting.
And that's really the difference, because we've had plenty of other cut to credits, awesome like R&B rap songs. The Addams Family, great.
Oh yeah,
the soundtrack.
The Addams are too legit.
Yeah, then the Ghostbusters 2 soundtrack is just fantastic.
Spirit. Some people hear it. Some people fear it.
Yeah, exactly. Some people just won't go near it, you know?
Nah, dude.
I have 2 or 3 of those songs on my Spotify playlist right now. Like, it's just,
all that Bobby Brown shit is on my main playlist for sure.
It's good. I can't help it.
And the Run DMC remake of the Ghostbusters theme. Okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's a matter of like, let's not care about the tone. Let's just get somebody who's really popular and throw them at the beginning of the credits.
And that happens a lot. Like, I mean, that was kind of a Hollywood thing around this time. Like, that's also, I think, how you get. Is it Kanye who does the Mission Impossible theme for Mission Impossible 3 or 4?
There was Metallica did one of them.
Limp Bizkit did it for
second one.
2, or was it Metallica for 2? Limp Bizkit did it for one of them.
What was happening? We all going to sleep? Oh, we're looking stuff up in real time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's that thing that we do.
The speaking of stuff like that, one of my favorite bands, the Distillers, did a version of the 60s Spider-Man theme for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. Not related at all, but I feel like I have to fill this dead air with something so that I don't have to edit it out later. How close are you, Steven? How close are we?
96, it was U2. I'm scrolling through the Wikipedia page here. Limp Bizkit did it for 2000, so they did it for the second one. Kanye West did the remix for Mission Impossible 3. There it is. Okay.
Word.
But where you get you get U2 does it for the first film, you get Limp Bizkit for the second, Kanye for the third. Like, that was in addition to like switching directors every movie, they would also switch artists on the theme every movie. That was kind of two of the things that franchise was known for in the early days that they've both abandoned in later years.
Well, I think they're kind of taking a cue from the Bond series, where you always have a new Bond girl and a new Bond song by a popular artist.
Yeah. And so, yeah, but and again, most of the times, and again, with Mission Impossible, those are written directly for the film. This just feels something completely different. This feels more in line with something like the ending of a Fast and Furious movie than it does the ending of a lighthearted family comedy about a bunch of dead people.
And that score, man, it's so against everything the score is doing. It's just the complete opposite. It takes you right out of it. Like, whatever level you were into this film, which for me, the production design and the score and a few of the performances, I really had a good time with. Overall, the movie, not that great, but there are a few elements that kind of kept me into it. And as soon as that song hits, right out of it.
It kind of checks you right out. I agree.
It's just like when What's Her Nuts in the Marvel movies, when she pushes somebody's soul out of them, like Doctor Strange does.
Yeah.
Where he's all like Badook, and then your soul's like Kadoosh. That was me. And that Nelly song just kadooshed my soul out of me as I was watching the movie. Doctor Strange style.
I really wish all of you could have seen what Tucker just did. It was fantastic.
I did a kadoosh.
Yeah, you kadooshed all right. You're kadooshing all over this episode.
That's why you hired me, for my kadooshing skills.
I think that was maybe one of those skills we didn't know about when we hired you, actually.
Added bonus.
It's a bonus, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Bonus.
So let me see. I got some more notes. So as previously mentioned, I hated Eddie Murphy's character from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
So by the end of it, like you know immediately how this is going to end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like he earned that shit at all.
Mm-hmm. No.
Just because he gets thrown out of a window, he's all of a sudden going to have a change of heart. Okay.
Actively getting cucked by a ghost, though. That's,
They tried to Peter Pan him. They tried to Robin Williams Peter Pan him, and it
doesn't work. Yeah.
No. He's gonna, and what makes him have a change of heart is the really expensive watch that he got her earlier. That,
oh my God,
for missing their anniversary. It's so stupid.
And it is so dumb. A thing that he got her as it was less an anniversary gift and more an apology gift because he is so consumed by work that he missed their anniversary dinner.
Yeah, and is so consumed by work that's all he fucking talks about.
Mm-hmm.
The entire movie.
Yep.
I mean, like, it's just, I don't know how many more times we can talk about how just predictable and just just overwrought this movie is. Like,
yeah, it's
the kid being afraid of spiders means he's going to have to face his big fear of spiders later.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
See, this film, I know this was way before like ChatGPT or something. This film feels like it was written by AI.
It kind of does. Yeah.
Kind of does. Yeah.
Yeah. It in that it is so formulaic and so by the numbers that it doesn't feel like there's anything in it worth holding on to. And again, I have to contrast it against Pirates of the Caribbean, which is a movie that does that phenomenally well. Gives you, characters and stakes and an actual story that and enough there for you to hold on to and say, hey, this is an actual movie. Whereas this just feels like a round of spot the reference and with, something vaguely resembling a narrative kind of wrapped around it.
Yeah, absolutely. I also didn't really care for the shoehorned in zombies in the mausoleum scene.
No, the zombies did look cool though. I'm just saying
They
look
pretty
really
good,
cool.
but like, not really. I feel like that was there just so they could get the reference of the skeleton hand opening the coffin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only reason it was there. It just seems like I don't know really why.
Speaking
right about ghosts, not anything else. But anyway.
Speaking of the special effects, I thought, while not very good, I thought they fit the film very well because it was kind of a film geared towards kids and stuff. And I thought the CGI was very cartoonish in nature. And I appreciated that for the tone of the film. And again, like I said, I really enjoyed the presentation of the ghost because it was just the Frighteners, except they were blue instead of like sort of dirty green.
Right. And you can tell it's a kid's movie because there are two kid characters that are shoehorned in that serve absolutely no narrative purpose whatsoever.
Yeah, except for being afraid of spiders. And let me tell you, I don't like to say bad things about child actors because they're child actors. And most of the time, it wasn't their idea to be there anyway.
Correct.
Boy, these kids sucked. Like real bad. Not that they had anything to work with, but boy,
they really don't.
Just toilet performances in this movie. Oh,
I mean, look,
golly.
The woman that plays Eddie Murphy's bride, though, she's not giving a performance. There's just nothing there. Was that me? She's just just nothing.
She would be great in a reboot of Mannequin.
Yeah, she was not great. That actress's name is Marsha Thomason, and let me look up her. I think this is like one of the biggest things that she has done. She was in 69 episodes of the television show White Collar.
Nice.
She played Naomi in Lost, 12 episodes of Lost. But yeah, a lot of TV. It looks like I'm looking through her filmography here. A lot of TV. Usually kind of some smaller arcs on a lot of these shows, but is a voice, the voice of Diana in Hitman Absolution. So there you go.
Cool.
But yeah, just kind of a TV actress is probably her biggest movie ever. And she doesn't do much here to really. There's not a lot of presence in this performance. I'm sorry to say.
It looks like she was Greta in the Netflix Castlevania as well, which I recommend to anyone, even if you're not a fan of the games.
It is pretty good. Yeah.
So so she's got some voice credits, got some TV credits, but I think this looks like maybe not her first movie, but definitely her biggest movie, and that is in her entire career. But yeah, based on this, I guess she
that's what I know her from is TV. Black Knight. I have a soft spot for 90s and early 2000s Eddie Murphy vehicles, or not Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence vehicles, stuff like Blue Streak and Black Knight. And I know they're terrible, but I can't get enough of them. And I knew her from something, and she's the chambermaid in Black Knight.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sure she does a better performance in those other films, but not here.
She does, because she's just a caricature of a character in that movie instead of just being a blank slate like she is in this film.
Well, and again, it's a very unenviable role. It's a thankless role. Not only are you playing the nagging wife character, but then you also have to play the like object of desire for this ghost, and it's neither one of those are particularly like juicy, meaty roles. There's not a lot of meat on the bone here, so she's not given a lot to do. But then she's also given some relatively probably poor direction from Minkoff, and then she's constantly having to put up with like Eddie Murphy and probably his kind of star antics on set. Like there's not a lot that she has to do here, and it's really frustrating that she doesn't really bring it because there's nothing really to bring. Like I wish I could fault her and say like, oh, she's terrible here, but I don't really think she has any other choice. Like this is a nothing character, a nothing role, and she's doing the best she can with it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't blame her for it. Just, it was very noticeable amongst the cast of not so great actors. Pretty stark contrast.
Yeah.
Although it's funny though, can you call it a nagging wife character if she has a justifiable reason to be nagging him?
I mean, everybody in America hated Anna Gunn's character in Breaking Bad, even though she was the only character with an actual, human motivation that made sense. So
she was the person I related to the most, and that show was so frustrating because of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, this poor woman. This poor woman. Everybody else is like, Skyler sucks. And I'm like, how? Are we watching the same show?
Oh, she's such a nag. And like everyone's like, no, she makes sense though.
She's reasonable. Like she's not completely insane and psychotic.
So the world at large would tell you, yes, Brett, yes, you can.
Jeez Louise.
Man, that's real fucking upsetting.
Oh, hey, welcome to America.
Not surprised, but upsetting it nonetheless.
Oh boy.
My next note. So I had a question. The end. I have a lot of questions. The first one. So, did all 999 ghosts go to heaven at the end?
That's the assumption, I guess, we can make, given all those little ghost balls are floating toward the sky.
Okay, if that's the case, then why didn't Madame Leota and the singing busts?
Because they were packed in the car already.
No, those spirits left as soon as the other ones did. Because when did that happen? Because like everybody in the car is dressed in different clothes.
Brett, no,
and it looks like they went.
Honey, don't ask questions.
Why are they taking Madame Leota and the bus on a road trip? Did they go back home and decide
to save our favorite characters for the sequel? That's why.
So the next movie can happen.
There's your answer. There's the answer I didn't think
Hey.
about. Yeah, you're right.
I did like the after credits scene though with Jennifer Tilly.
That was pretty
cool.
I didn't watch it because I turned the credits off. What happened?
Basically, I think doing the incantation from the ride, I would assume.
Yeah, dude. Okay. She nailed it too. She was really hamming it up. It was great.
Well, shit. I guess I should go look that up. But yeah, no, I think that's all of my notes, with the exception of to bring it to when this episode releases this week. Disney really fucks shit up sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, well, yeah, no, especially lately. We won't talk about the strike or anything.
Yeah.
Bob Iger.
Really, we talked about this enough yesterday. We went on a big long rant about it.
Yeah. Okay. See last week's episode on Bratz for that.
Cool. But sometimes they get their asses saved in ways they didn't intend. So I have to mention Hocus Pocus. That movie that has become a quintessential Halloween movie, also released in March. And it bombed real bad because they released a fucking Halloween movie
in March,
in the spring/summer.
Yeah.
Luckily,
and honestly, up until a couple years ago, would have been eligible for covering on this podcast.
Yeah. But luckily, thanks to, video and home video and, streaming and whatever sales after the fact, later, obviously, they weren't streaming in the 90s. It became the quintessential Halloween movie we all know and love.
Right.
Otherwise, that movie would have disappeared and we would have talked about it on this podcast.
Like, was it that movie that everyone discovered once Disney Plus finally came? Was it Mr. Oogity? Was that the?
I think
I
so.
don't know
I
what
don't
the
remember.
fuck are you talking about, Steven?
Research shit in real time while I keep talking. So they're doing it again with the Haunted Mansion movie. They're releasing a movie that should absolutely have been released in fucking October, September at the earliest.
Mm-hmm.
In July.
Summer
It's
blockbuster season.
The middle of summer.
It's July.
Which is why we have this weird Spooky-thon episode in the middle of July, or I guess the end of July, but yeah.
At least we've gotten it over with, so we can focus on like more important stuff for Spooky-thon.
Yeah, I wouldn't have. This would not have been on the list for Spooky-thon for a couple more years at least.
Like the much anticipated. I'm sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I don't even remember what I was gonna say now.
Okay, I was gonna say, including the much anticipated Patreon unenfranchised of The Rage Carrie 2. Everybody's clamoring for this one. It's all over the comments. People are like, when are we gonna get that Rage Carrie 2? You guys, it's coming in October. Don't worry, we're gonna get to it. I know everybody is highly anticipating.
Tucker reading his own comments because he's the only one asking for it, but he's so loud and persistent, we kind of don't have much of a choice.
And handsome.
I don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say that.
You don't have to. Your eyes say it all, Steven.
Dude.
So did you find what you were looking for? Or what?
I have no. Mr. Boogity is what it's called.
Right.
Oh, isn't that the bad guy from Nightmare Before Christmas? Well, that's Oogie Boogie.
Oogie Boogie.
Yeah, there you go.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, Mr. Boogity was apparently a wonderful, a Magical World of Disney episode. Yeah, it was a made-for-TV horror movie for kids, basically. And
I'd be into checking that out.
It's you just check out Disney Plus, and it's probably still on there.
That was a staple of my childhood, was watching The Colorful World, The Wonderful World, The Magical World, whatever it was called at the time, of Walt Disney on Sunday nights on ABC.
Yeah, and we were a fancy household and actually had the Disney Channel when it was a paid channel.
Oh shit, Brett!
So
damn,
I got to see the cool Halloween shit,
That's...
like Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and they did this thing. It was like because music videos were a big thing at the time, so they would play spooky-ish songs and play related Disney cartoons behind them. It was pretty good.
You know, though, Brett, I guess maybe your parents gave you a choice. They were like, okay, Brett, you can either have the Disney Channel for the rest of your life or go to Disney World once. And you were like, Disney Channel all the way, guys. Core memory unlocked? Yeah, you're welcome.
No, I was a pretty smart kid, so I probably... Because I found the Haunted Mansion later. I didn't know really about... I knew of the Haunted Mansion, but I didn't become obsessed with it until later.
Right, that tracks.
So I probably would have said Disney Channel because...
Yeah, like I say. Yeah.
Because really all I knew...
your childhood.
Because again, I don't know, I found a lot of the stuff... As a kid, I was not as obsessive about things as I got when into my 20s and early 30s. A lot of the things I love and are obsessed with, I really got into later in life. With the exception of a couple things like Ghostbusters. I was always obsessed with Ghostbusters. I was
going to say, Ghostbusters is kind of a core obsession for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Canon event, if you will.
All Bretts across all multiverses experience a love for the Ghostbusters at an early age. And if they don't, that universe just dies.
Actually, we know that not to be true. Because there is at least one universe that we've crossed over with a couple of times where that Brett is not aware of Ghostbusters. So
yeah, that universe is gone at this point. It has crumbled into oblivion.
It potentially has. We haven't heard from them for a while.
That's true. We've not. We usually hear from them around April, and we didn't hear anything from them this past year.
That's because we neglected the canon event in that universe. So now it's got to go. got to the point to where there's no way you're ever going to be a Ghostbusters fan in that universe. So the universe just unraveled like Mr. Fantastic and Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
Into
Spoilers
spaghetti
for that
noodles.
movie.
Shame, really.
Oh, everybody's seen it by now. It's Sam Raimi and it's MCU, so you should have seen it by now.
It's also
It's the last MCU movie I saw in theaters. Maybe the last one I will ever see in theaters.
I wish I would have seen that at the movie theater, just for the Sam Raimi of it all, honestly.
It's also like a year and a half old now.
Yeah, look,
At
man.
least.
People get bitchy when you spoil like classic movies from like the 40s online. Like people are dumb.
Well, there's a difference between, you know, revealing one death or one plot point and completely spoiling the movie. And I agree. Even if it's an old movie and you just come out with like, oh, spoilers for Sixth Sense. Oh, he's Bruce Willis the whole time. You know, like if you just come out and say that, like that's not cool, man.
Which reminds me, if we want to talk about one fucking thing that is like we talk about how trite this fucking movie is.
Yeah.
They have to shoehorn in the I see dead people line in this fucking movie.
What the fuck?
And there's not even like a follow-up or like a joke after it. Like that is the
There's
joke.
no reason for
That's
it.
the
It's
joke.
just
We're
there.
referencing The Sixth Sense, a movie that came out 4 years earlier. That is the joke.
Where they briefly do a crossover
Dad,
with the Scary
yes,
Movie
son.
franchise and just like randomly say some shit.
Yeah. Hey, Dad. Yes, son. I see dead people. Boom. It just sits
And
there
nothing else.
like a fucking lead
doesn't-
balloon.
It doesn't even sit there. It cuts directly to something else. They don't even let it sit for a second. They're just like, oh, you're right. We fucked up. Cut to something else. Sorry. We're leaving it in, but also sorry.
God.
We know this
yeah,
meme is old already, but we're gonna do it
Yeah.
anyway.
right.
Already, yes.
I hate.
I'm surprised there wasn't any bullet time in this movie.
Oh my God.
You know what I
No.
mean? It seemed like the right time for it.
Honestly,
Oh my
me too. Now that you mention it, I'm surprised that wasn't in there either.
Oh my God. That's such. I hate that so much.
I'm sure there's a deleted scene somewhere of like one of the ghosts doing bullet time, you know,
the Haunted
during the
Mansion
carriage scene.
was released a Halloween movie released just in time for Thanksgiving, November
No,
26th, 2003.
no, hold on, Steven. I
Oh.
believe.
Oh no.
I haven't looked it up into this now, but I'm pretty sure I have a memory because
I'm pretty sure you're right. I'm also we missed you last week because there definitely were Bratz video games and we did not have you here to
Oh.
talk about them.
Oh God, I wouldn't have wanted to.
But you would have had to because that's
yeah,
the job.
I know. Thank God I missed it. I mean, oh no, that sucks.
Can I before you start, can I guess what platforms this Haunted Mansion game was on? 2003. Let me guess. You ready?
All right.
Is it 2003 or 2007? 2003. I'm thinking of Bratz.
2003.
Bratz was 2007. Yeah, that game was
2003.
the DS.
The Haunted Mansion comes out on PlayStation 2 and Game Boy Advance.
You
Did I win?
got PlayStation 2 correct and Game Boy Advance correct.
Were there more platforms?
There were two other platforms.
Xbox and GameCube, probably.
Correct. Well done, sir.
Thank you. What do I win? Nothing. Okay.
Now, what's funny though is the game is not based on the movie. It comes out the same
Why are
year.
we talking about it? Oh,
Well, because I mean,
It's clearly a tie-in.
and it's a video game from the franchise. We do this
Right.
all the time. It doesn't have to be
That's all.
based on the movie specifically. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done that entire video game corner episode of on Resident Evil
or the Hulk one,
or the Hulk one
for that matter. Yeah,
or the
That
Muppets
tracks.
one
That
Or Hitman.
tracks.
or Hitman. Correct. But this one seems like I don't know, man. It's got a really convoluted story that doesn't seem to have anything to do with the ride, as usual. And it seems to be one of those like top-down, like cartoony, real like I don't know how to describe these kinds of games, like action adventure, if that makes sense. Tucker, you might know what I'm talking about.
Are there like just a shit ton of enemies? Is it kind of like Gauntlet?
No. I mean, there's collectibles. Yeah, kind of like Gauntlet, but not a whole lot of enemies. It has that same sort of look and style, but not a whole lot of enemies.
Kind of a dungeon crawler, sort of.
Kinda, yeah. At least from what I can see from the screenshots here. Yeah, I mean it's very cartoony. There's giant spiders. There's your usual run of the mill pirate ghosts and a Grim Reaper monster. I don't know. This looks very early 2000s Nintendo game.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's doesn't look good. There's probably a reason I never heard of it until just now. But that, surprisingly, is the only Haunted Mansion video game.
Good.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I would agree with you. Good. That's fine. We don't need any.
I think an open world game where you have to explore the mansion would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, especially one that has how they access the multiverse is called the Endless Stairway, and the different stairways take you to different mansions all across the multiverse.
Nice.
I submit that we reskin the first Resident Evil game as a Haunted Mansion game. Let's do that.
I don't know about a reskin, but close. We could probably do that.
Yeah,
that wouldn't be bad.
So Haunted Mansion opens just in time for Thanksgiving, Wednesday, November 26th, and across the 5-day weekend, it earns about $34 million, which is enough to put it in second place that weekend. And this top 5 is a who's who of past episodes of this show.
This is my favorite part.
We've covered a few of these. The first one is one that we covered earlier this year. It's in its second week of release. It is the only movie I think we've covered that was directed by a one-time art director. Or I guess he still is an art director. He went back to it because directing didn't pan out. Starring a adaptation of a book, starring a comedian in a role that he was very poorly suited for. Based on a children's book. It is Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat.
The Gato and the Hato, yeah.
Yes, very terrible film. This, of course, opens second to that. It earns, like I said, $34 million on its way to a $75.8 million domestic gross. So not a good multiplier. In its second weekend, it goes from second place down to third. The week after that, it's down to fifth. Like, it just starts plummeting like a stone. In third place, another movie we've covered on this podcast a couple years ago, big Christmas film. It's been in theaters for 4 weeks already and has already earned $129 million, but somehow magically did not get a sequel because the star didn't want it. It is, of course, Will Ferrell's Elf. Which
was written by the writer of this movie.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, there you go. This guy was burning up the box office in 2003.
He's only written Elf, Haunted Mansion, Zoom, and the Spiderwick Chronicles. And after 2008, he just hasn't really done anything. Something called Strange Magic.
We can cover literally all of those on this podcast. That is fucking wild. In fourth place, a little movie called Gothica. One of Halle Berry's Oscar follow-ups there. And then in fifth place, it's been out for 3 weeks. It was at 4 the week before. It's on its way to being an Oscar player, starring Russell Crowe and the patron saint of this podcast, Mr. Paul Bettany. It is Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World, a movie that fucking rules.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I thought it was called Boring, Boring, Boring. Who cares? Boring. It's a boat movie, Steven.
Yeah, it's a fucking good boat movie.
We don't like boat movies of this podcast. We're
on the whole, yes, I agree. Unless it's Jaws or Master and Commander.
There's always exceptions, and I've never seen Mastering Commanders.
So you're just talking out of your ass right now.
Why? I thought this would indicate you've seen it.
It's a boat.
Why don't you see it? You just said there's exceptions.
boat.
Because he would
since
rather
you guys
he would rather revel in his ignorance.
No, I was just gonna say, since you guys have said that it's a really good boat movie, then I might check it out. It's definitely not at the top of my priority list, but before it wasn't even on my list, so we're getting there.
That's a win. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Rounding out the top 10, we do have Bad Santa, The Missing,
Ooh,
Timeline,
Sorry.
Love Actually, and Disney's Brother Bear.
you guys are doing yourselves a disservice if you're not watching Bad Santa at least 3 times every December.
I've never
It's
seen
one
Bad
of-
Santa.
That's too fucking bad, Steven. And I really wish that we could do it on the main feed, but they made a really shitty sequel to it.
Yeah, Badder Santa.
But the first film is one of Billy Bob Thornton's best performances, I think.
All right.
It's up there with Sling Blade and A Simple Plan. And
so good in Simple
homeboy
Plan.
from Man Who Knew Too Much. Man Who Knew Too, the man who
Yeah,
the Coen Brothers movie that I like, that's my favorite, but
Yeah.
now I can't remember what the fuck it's called.
it's okay. The Man Who Wasn't There.
There you go.
Haunted Mansion again goes on to make 75.8 million domestic, another 79.9 international, for a total of about 155.8 million worldwide. Decent, but not enough. I mean, the production budget was 90 million, and usually you want to try to at least coop that in domestic at least before you try to make a sequel, and it didn't hit those numbers because that doesn't take into account any advertising done for the film. And I
this
remember
was
this being
heavily promoted.
a very heavily promoted movie.
You had
Yeah.
Happy Meals, you had commercials, you had merchandise.
Comic
before
book
the movie even
magazine
came out.
ads,
Yeah.
So yeah, this movie was fucking everywhere. For all the good that it did, it kind of opened to a wet fart and kept dropping. It gets a 14% tomatometer score. The critics' consensus, neither scary nor funny. The Haunted Mansion is as lifeless as the ghosts in the movie. The Metascore is a 34, generally unfavorable reviews from 34 critics. And the Letterboxd score is a 2.6. Brett, out of 5 stars, how many are you bestowing upon 2003's The Haunted Mansion?
1.5.
1.5 for Brett. Tucker, what about you?
Well, I will give it 1 star for Terrence Stamp, Nathaniel Parker, and Jennifer Tilly, and everybody else who showed up for this movie, and another star for the score and the production design. So
All right.
2 stars.
I also give it 2 stars. So that is...
Because at least it's not Bratz.
I mean, I was... The fact that I had just seen Bratz literally hours before, I'm sure had something to do with it. But yeah. And had just
Bratz
finished
makes
talking
this
about
looks
Bratz.
like The Godfather Part 2, man.
It kind of does, yeah. Like Bratz is real bad. But hey, at least it's not Bratz. Like this actually looks like a movie that got released in theaters, whereas Bratz looked like a made-for-TV movie that someone decided needed a theatrical release.
Yikes.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, is real bad. But that is our episode on 2003's The Haunted Mansion, and yeah, it's been fun. We've had a good time. You can find us on all your social media platforms. We are on Instagram, Letterboxd, Facebook, Twitter for now, and Threads at Disenfranch Pod. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. But if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review. That really does go a long way to helping other people find this podcast as well. And if you particularly enjoyed this, share it with some of your other friends who might also enjoy The Haunted Mansion or its affiliated lore, or just want to get mad listening to us talk about it. I don't know. If you like this movie, if you don't like this movie, tell everybody else about this podcast. And then they can hear us talk about it and have their own opinions, I guess.
Hate listen is still a listen.
It's still a download, and we like those. Thank you. You can shoot us an email, disenfranchpod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Introduce yourself. Say hi. Let us know what failed franchise starters you would like to see us cover in the back half of this year, because we've actually got some stuff opening up after after September. We've got pretty much a wide playing field after September. So let us know what you want to hear us talk about, and we might talk about some of it. Who knows? I'm your host, Stephen Foxworthy. You can find me on Instagram, Letterboxd, Twitter for now, Threads, and now Blue Sky at Chewy Walrus. Brett, where can we find you on social medias?
Just Instagram and Letterboxd at sus_warlock.
And Tucker?
So when you sign on to Blue Sky, do you just constantly have the ELO song Mr. Blue Sky playing in your head? Because I would. Like every time I logged in, I'd be like bum 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 bum, like getting all hyped. Yeah.
About half the time, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm on YouTube at Ice909, ICENINE, the number 0 and the number 9. I will again state my intentions to continue the preservation project just so I remember to do it when I have time. That's coming soon, hopefully. Also, me and the team at Tuck Mugs would really like you to come check that out.
At Tuck_Mugs on Instagram. I love that we're keeping this bit. I love that this bit is surviving.
Everybody on the staff, I like to thank all of them. Everybody really pulls their weight and makes Tuck Mugs just a really, really cool and unique thing on the Insta scams. So thank you, Tuck Mugs staff and crew, everybody working behind the scenes to really make this thing happen. Like,
takes a village, you know.
Yeah, it really, really does. It really does.
Hard.
Hey, I resent that.
And also, we're still looking for guest mugs. I've already got guest mugs from the two guys that pretty much had to do it.
Right.
So come on, guys. And we've gotten a lot of people that are people that enjoy this podcast that have subscribed to Tuck Mugs. So hey, you people who have done that, email us with a picture of your mug, the story behind it, and what is in it, and we will put it on Tuck Mugs.
Go ahead and send that to disenfranchised@gmail.com because Tuck Mugs is a subsidiary of Disenfranchised. So it all funnels into the same place.
The Venn diagram overlaps. Some of the same staff from the podcast works for the Instascam page as well.
Right. In fact, it's the same. It's we hired out the same company that does the social media for this podcast, actually. So
yes,
yeah, it's all coming from the same place, and what a bit, what a fucking bit.
Yes.
But that is our episode on 2003's Haunted Mansion. I am your host, Stephen Foxworthy, from my co-hosts, Brett Wright and Tucker. Until next time.
Hurry back. Be sure to bring your death certificate.